Welcome back, everybody. Ready for another deep dive?
I sure am.
Awesome. Today
We're heading to Turkey.
we're time traveling back to the 1990s in Turkey.
Buckle up.
And you might be thinking, Turkey in the 90s. Why?
Why not?
Well, that's where this awesome photo listicle comes in.
It's called.
Remembering being a kid in the 90s with 200 photos.
200 photos.
Mhm.
I mean, talk about a visual feast. And you don't even need to speak Turkish to get it.
Nope. The pictures really do speak for themselves.
Right. It's amazing. And even if you didn't grow up in Turkey, or heck, even in the 90s.
There's that universal childhood thing, you know?
Exactly. And that's kind of our mission today. We're digging into those shared experiences, maybe some surprising differences too.
I think the biggest difference might be that this listicle,
Yeah.
it's like a window into a time before
Before the internet.
Yeah, like the internet as we know it.
Yeah.
No smartphones, no social media. This is a pre-digital childhood, which is pretty mind-blowing for kids today to even imagine. Totally. Like, just think about it. Back then, if you wanted to make a phone call,
You had to use a phone booth.
a real-life phone booth, and not just any phone booth, you needed one of those.
Remember the little G-tons?
Oh, yeah. Those little tokens. You couldn't just talk forever. Had to think about what you were going to say.
Make it count.
Exactly. And not everyone had a phone at home either, so phone booths were a big deal.
A lifeline to the outside world, a way to connect, even a symbol of growing up, you know? Like you're finally old enough to use the phone booth.
It's wild to think about. And forget about taking a selfie and instantly sharing it with everyone. Photos were precious back then.
Each one carefully placed in a photo album.
Those sticky plastic sleeves.
And if you messed up the film,
Game over.
gone.
Yeah.
It's so different from how we take photos for granted today.
It's true. Makes you think about what we've gained and maybe what we've lost a little bit too. And speaking of things from the past, how about music?
Ah, yes.
Cassette tapes. Remember those?
The sound of rewinding with a pencil. The struggle to fast forward to that one song.
If the tape broke, forget it.
Hours spent piecing it back together.
But there was something satisfying about it.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
It was like you were really connected to your music. It wasn't just a digital file. You could hold it, care for it.
It was an experience. All right, now for the king of 90s entertainment, video games. But we're not talking about fancy VR headsets or online worlds here.
Back then, it was Atari and Sega.
And even those were a luxury for a lot of families.
Yeah, and you had a limited number of games, nothing like today.
One photo in the listicle shows kids crowded around a TV playing Tank 90. What's
Yeah.
that all about?
It's this classic arcade game, surprisingly addictive, even though it's pretty basic.
Yeah.
You control a tank, shoot enemy tanks, avoid obstacles. I mean, it was so popular.
Oh, wow.
Some kids even saw those tank after images, even after they stopped playing.
Wow. Talk about dedicated.
Yeah.
And of course, there's Tetris, the game that needs no explanation.
A true classic, transcends generations and cultures.
Right. It proves that simple but engaging gameplay never goes out of style. No need for crazy graphics or stories. Speaking of things that stick with you.
Like those Tank 90 after images.
Oh, yeah. Power Rangers was huge back then, right? It was like a global phenomenon, those colorful suits, the over-the-top fight scenes.
Definitely. And in Turkey, Tsubasa was really popular. It's a Japanese anime series about soccer.
Soccer.
Yeah, it actually helped make soccer, or football as they call it there, super popular in Turkey. It's interesting how TV can shape interests and even national trends.
It's true. Especially back then when TV was like the main source of entertainment. Now, the listicle also mentions these guys, Hugo and Tolga. Who were they?
Oh, they were super popular TV hosts.
Yeah.
They had these shows where kids could call in.
No way.
Yeah, and actually control characters on the screen.
So like interactive gaming before the internet.
Exactly. So kids were glued to the TV, but not just for watching passively. It was way more interactive than we might think.
I love that. And let's not forget those Sunday night movies, when families would gather around the TV.
Oh, yes, Sunday night cinema.
The excitement of waiting to see what movie they'd show.
It was a tradition, creating those shared family memories.
I bet a lot of people still have fond memories of those nights.
For sure. Now, are you ready for a trip down toy lane?
Oh, I'm ready. Let's hear about the toys that sparked imagination back in 90s Turkey.
Get ready to be surprised by how simple they were.
I'm intrigued.
One photo shows kids showing off their bike reflectors. Like it was the coolest thing ever.
It's funny how something so basic can bring so much joy. It's a reminder that happiness doesn't always come from expensive stuff,
Right. And these kids were really good at making their own fun. Like they'd combine regular balls with plastic ones
Yeah.
to make makeshift soccer balls.
That's awesome. Resourceful, too.
Oh, and check this out. Blowing bubbles with chewing gum wrappers. I mean, who hasn't tried that at some point?
That's a classic, a universal childhood experience for sure. And speaking of simple pleasures, let's not forget about popping the little air pockets. I still do it.
It's like a stress reliever for all ages. But the kids in these photos, they took creativity to a whole other level.
How so?
I mean, we're talking building model cars from newspaper cutouts,
Wow.
making
Yeah.
plaster molds in art class, decorating their notebook edges with these intricate patterns.
I'm impressed. Those are some serious DIY skills. It makes you wonder if maybe they had more time for that kind of stuff back then.
Yeah, maybe life moved at a slower pace before the internet and all the distractions we have now. More time to just tinker and explore.
It makes you think. Maybe we could all benefit from slowing down a bit and rediscovering the joy of creating things with our own hands.
Absolutely. But of course, no childhood is complete without some mischief, right?
True. The listicle shows some classic toys that probably fueled a lot of playful battles, like slingshots.
Ah, the slingshot. A test of aim, accuracy, and maybe a few harmless pranks along the way.
I'm sure parents had a lot to say about those. And then there's the mantar tabankasi, which translates to cork gun.
Basically, toy guns that shoot little corks. Imagine the epic battles. Running around, dodging corks, laughing. Good times.
Sounds like it. And some games just never go out of style, like Sec, better known as hopscotch. It's amazing how something so simple can entertain generation after generation.
Right. Just some chalk and imagination. And marble games were big back then, too.
Oh, yeah. Marbles.
Each marble had a different value. They called them 1 lick, 5 lick, 10 lick. So it wasn't just about flicking marbles. It was like a mini economy.
I can almost feel the weight of those marbles in my hand trying to make that perfect shot. The thrill of winning, the agony of losing.
It's amazing how these seemingly simple games could teach you about competition, strategy, even a bit of risk-taking.
Definitely. All this talk about toys and games is making me hungry. Let's shift gears to food and culture. The listicle really captures those street vendors in 90s Turkey.
It's such a vibrant part of Turkish culture, even today. Imagine strolling through a park and coming across Turşuku amkalar pickle vendors.
Those tangy treats. Or hearing the call of nylon ku, the nylon bag sellers echoing through the streets.
Ah, the sounds of childhood. And don't forget about those homemade treats, like roasting chestnuts on a stove.
Oh, yeah, with that risk of them exploding.
A delicious but slightly dangerous adventure.
My grandma used to do that. The whole house would smell amazing. And of course, there's salsa ekmek bread with tomato paste.
So simple, so good, a quick and easy meal.
A taste of childhood for many. And on a cold winter day, nothing beats a cup of hot salep.
It's a traditional Turkish drink made from orchid flower.
Orchid flower, that's different.
It is. It's thick and creamy, delicately sweet, usually sprinkled with cinnamon.
Sounds delicious. All right, let's talk about those iconic snacks that bring back memories for anyone who grew up in 90s Turkey.
Okay. We've got to start with chocokrem, the legendary chocolate spread.
Chukuk.
Practically a breakfast staple. Like Nutella, but even more beloved in Turkey.
I can almost taste it. Spread on fresh bread, the perfect way to start the day. And what about those little packs of chocolate milk? Uslu kutusunda sukomel.
Oh, yeah. The 3-pack. That was
Yeah.
a special treat. And then there were Yumium candies.
Yumium candies.
Yeah, they were famous for melting super fast.
I remember those. Like, they dissolved in your mouth. And who could forget the excitement of the surprise toys in candy boxes?
It was like a mini treasure hunt. You never knew what you'd find.
Those little surprises make childhood so much fun. Now, no deep dive into 90s Turkey would be complete without talking about social life in school. Remember life before social media.
It's almost hard to imagine now, right?
People connected in such different ways. Like, they had this thing called Televol.
It was basically a message board where you could leave notes for other people.
Yeah, okay.
Way slower and more deliberate than instant messaging.
So like a pre-internet social network.
Exactly. And people actually wrote letters and sent postcards. Can you imagine waiting for a reply?
The anticipation. And for those without phones at home, those phone booths were essential. It was the only way to stay in touch.
Definitely. Now let's step into a 90s Turkish classroom.
Yeah.
Can you picture those Sunday evenings ironing school uniforms?
It was a ritual, getting ready for the week ahead.
Absolutely.
Oh, and speaking of school days, those Sonali books were iconic, right?
Oh, yeah. They were used to teach kids how to read. Simple stories, charming illustrations, A real cultural touchstone for a whole generation.
And those Güzel Yazı lessons or calligraphy. Remember using those messy inkwells?
That ink smell.
And getting good grades was a big deal, earning takdir high honors or teşekkür honors on your report card.
It was something to be proud of. But imagine missing out on high honors by just 1 point.
Gosh.
Talk about motivation to study harder.
All these photos and memories really bring 90s Turkey to life. It's fascinating.
It is. It's like stepping back in time to a simpler era, before the internet and smartphones took over.
A time when things moved at a slower pace.
Maybe even a bit more magical.
I like that. But we're not done yet. There's still so much more to uncover about this unique time period. What else can we discover about this period of time?
Well, I gotta say, going through these photos, one thing that really stands out,
What's that?
it's just how much fun those kids were
I
having.
know, right?
With such simple things like no fancy gadgets, no internet,
Yeah, it's refreshing.
makes you think maybe we've overcomplicated things a bit.
Maybe.
I mean, they were building their own toys, coming up with games, finding joy in the simplest things. It really makes you appreciate the power of imagination.
It does. It's like maybe all the technology we have today sometimes, you know?
Holds us back.
Yeah, like it kind of prevents us from being as creative.
It's possible.
Mm-hmm.
This listicle, it's more than just a trip down memory lane, though.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good reminder that fun doesn't have to be expensive or complicated.
That's such a good point. So for our listener tuning in today, what can we really take away from this peek into 90s Turkish childhood?
I think it highlights those universal themes of childhood, no matter where or when you grew up.
Like what?
The joy of playing, the importance of family and traditions, the power of imagination. These are things that connect us all.
I love that. And it's amazing to see how those themes played out in this specific time and place, you know, with its own cultural influences.
Exactly. It's all there. And the toys they played with, the shows they watched, even the food they ate. It's a reminder that childhood is shaped by its context, but those core experiences, they're often pretty similar.
That makes sense. This deep dive has been such a cool journey. Like we've actually traveled back in time and experienced 90s Turkey through a child's eyes.
It's been awesome sharing these memories and insights. You know, looking through this listicle, it makes me wonder,
So will.
what things from your childhood will people find fascinating in the future?
Oh, that's a good one. What will they look back on with like nostalgia and wonder?
It's interesting to think about, right? We're all creating those memories now that'll someday be seen as relics of a bygone era.
Wow. It's true. And maybe someday someone will be doing a deep dive into our childhood photos.
Unearthing those hidden gems.
I like that. Well, on that note, we'll leave you to think about your own childhood memories and the unique experiences that made you who you are today.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into 90s Turkish childhood.
It's been a blast.
You know, going through this listicle, I keep coming back to how resourceful those kids were.
Yeah, they really were.
Like building their own toys, inventing games, finding joy in the simplest thing. It makes you wonder if all the tech we have now, sometimes it kind of...
Dulls our own creativity.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe we've become a little too reliant on screens and gadgets.
It's possible. Maybe we've lost touch with that, like inner child who just wants to create and explore.
It's a good reminder for all of us, I think.
Definitely. So for our listeners tuning in, what's the big takeaway from this deep dive into 90s Turkish childhood?
I think it really highlights those universal themes of childhood. No matter where you grew up, when you grew
What
up.
our core experiences.
Exactly. The joy of play, the importance of family and traditions, that power of imagination. These are things that connect us all.
Beautifully said. And it's just amazing to see how those themes played out in this specific time and place, you know?
Yeah, like with its own cultural influences.
Right. It's all there. The toys, the shows, the food. It's a reminder that childhood is definitely shaped by its context, but those core experiences are often pretty similar across the board.
That's true.
This deep dive has been like, I don't know, a time machine almost. We've really experienced 90s Turkey through a child's eyes.
I've loved sharing these memories and insights. And going through all this really makes you think,
Oh.
what will people find fascinating about your childhood in the future?
Ooh, that's a great question to ponder. What will they look back on and think, wow, that's so different?
Right. Because we're all making those memories right now. The things that'll someday be looked at as, like, relics of a bygone era.
It's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it that way. Like, maybe someday someone will be doing a deep dive into our childhood photos.
Exactly. Discovering the treasures of our time.
I love that. Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive, but hopefully this has sparked some of your own childhood memories.
And maybe inspired you to appreciate those unique experiences that shaped who you are.
Thanks for joining us on this journey back to 90s Turkey. It's been a blast.
It really has.